In July this year, India began to actively promote the import cooperation of coking coal with Mongolia, and then several Indian steel companies quickly reached an agreement with Mongolia. One of the companies plans to import 30,000 tons of coal from Mongolia, while another plans to import 3,000 to 5,000 tons. It is worth noting that these coking coals imported from Mongolia must be transshipped through China before entering India. Until October this year, India seemed dissatisfied with the transit arrangement in China during the transportation of coal and planned to abandon this channel and find a new transportation route. Unexpectedly, India immediately accelerated its contact with Russia, hoping to open another transportation channel for Mongolian coal exports through Russia. So, why did India choose to abandon the transportation channel with China? And will Russia support India's plan? If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now, let's get into today's topic. As we all know, India has invested a lot of energy in developing domestic industry and infrastructure in recent years. As early as 2013, India's annual steel consumption was about 73 million tons, and by the end of 2023, this figure has exceeded 120 million tons, making India one of the fastest-growing steel consumption countries among the world's major economies. It is expected that by 2030, India's annual steel consumption will increase to more than 200 million tons. It is worth mentioning that India is not only a major steel consumer, but also a major steel producer, with an annual output of 140 million tons. However, despite India's strong steel production capacity, it faces a major problem. Its coking coal resources are small in quantity and poor in quality. Therefore, India mainly relies on electric furnace steelmaking and has long needed to import high-quality coking coal from abroad to support the development of the steel industry. According to the Coal Association, India's coking coal consumption in 2023 will be about 70 million tons, of which 63 million tons will rely on imports. 65% of these imported coking coals come from Australia, and the rest are mainly provided by Russia, the United States, and Southeast Asian countries. However, Australia's coal exports have been unstable recently and often fail to meet India's needs. In fact, the reason behind this is closely related to China. A few years ago, due to some special reasons, China suspended coal imports from Australia. At that time, Australia did not stagnate, but quickly resold coking coal to India, and the two sides reached a stable supply cooperation. However, since last year, as China-Australia relations have gradually warmed up, coal imports have also begun to resume, which has made Australia's coking coal supply to India unstable. It should be noted that many Australian coal mines are supported by investment from Chinese companies, and even the infrastructure of mineral railway construction is undertaken by Chinese companies. Therefore, when China resumes imports, it will naturally enjoy priority supply. Faced with this situation, India gradually realized the risks of over-reliance on a single country, so it began to turn its attention to Mongolia, a new coking coal exporter. In July this year, Indian research found that Mongolia's coking coal is of excellent quality, and the price per ton is about $50 lower than that of Australia. This makes India hope to strengthen cooperation with Mongolia in the coal field in the future. The Indian government expects that the cooperation project can be directly put in a trial operation at the end of July. The latest progress shows that two Indian steel companies have reached cooperation agreements with Mongolia, one of which plans to import 30,000 tons of coal from Mongolia, and the other plans to test the waters to import 3,000 to 5,000 tons. If the cooperation goes smoothly, India is expected to further increase its coal imports from Mongolia. However, as a landlocked country, Mongolia is sandwiched between China and Russia and lacks direct access to the sea. So how should India import Mongolia's coal resources? In fact, although Mongolia does not have a direct export route, it has reached a cooperation agreement with China long before, planning to build a China-Mongolia railway to transport Mongolian goods to Tianjin port in China. This means that the coal purchased by India from Mongolia must pass through China before entering India. There are actually potential benefits to choosing to transport through China. China's transportation infrastructure is very complete, and the transportation routes are relatively close, which not only helps to improve transportation efficiency, but also effectively reduces costs. Therefore, from a rational point of view, China is undoubtedly the best choice for India. In the early stages of the project, Mongolia's coal exports to India through China progressed quite smoothly, and it can be said that there were no obstacles. However, in October this year, India suddenly stopped its plan to import coal from Mongolia, saying it did not want to use China's transportation channels. What happened? According to my investigation, India suddenly stopped the transportation of Mongolian coal through China, mainly due to concerns about the threat from China. Some people within the Indian government expressed strong dissatisfaction with this cooperation and believe that they should not be too dependent on China. They are worried that relying on China for logistics and transportation may be disadvantageous to India, so they suggest finding alternatives to ensure a stable supply of coal from Mongolia. In contrast, Indian steel companies are more pragmatic. They do not particularly care about whether to bypass China, but hope to find a reliable transportation route that can ensure a stable supply of coal. The reason why the Indian government is so cautious is actually largely due to the tension on the Sino-Indian border in recent years. In India's strategic perspective, China is not only a potential threat, but also an important competitor. In this case, India is reluctant to complete project logistics through China because it means paying tolls, thereby increasing China's foreign exchange income. More importantly, such passage may indirectly enhance China's influence in the region. If a strong conflict breaks out between the two sides on the border, China may put pressure on India at a critical moment. Based on these considerations, the Indian government does not regard the transportation channel through China as an ideal option, so it has to work hard to develop a new route. However, from a geographical point of view, if India wants to bypass China, Mongolia does not have many options for coal exports. The only option is to go through Russia. So, will India succeed in going through the Russian channel? In fact, after India announced that it would no longer rely on China's transportation channel, it quickly started frequent contacts with Russia to explore the feasibility of establishing a new transportation channel for Mongolian coal exports through Russia. Many people may ask, since India is worried about China's pressure, isn't it worried that Russia will do the same? In fact, India's relationship with Russia has always been relatively friendly and can be said to be quite deep. After the outbreak of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, European and American countries, led by the United States, imposed sanctions on Russia and refused to buy Russian energy, which once affected Russia's oil sales. At this critical moment, India became the main buyer of Russian energy, helping it ease the pressure on exports. At present, 45% of Russia's crude oil exports go to India, making India a big money bag for Russia. From India's perspective, the risk of establishing this transportation channel with Russia is low. As a major buyer of Russia, India has a certain degree of voice and is unlikely to face pressure or backstab risks from Russia. It should be noted that Russia has neither explicitly supported nor directly rejected India's transportation plan, and is still carefully evaluating it. During the talks between the two sides, India proposed two potential export routes to Russia. One is to transport to Chennai, a southeastern city in India, by sea through the port of Vladivostok in Russia's Far East. The other is to transport to India through the International North-South Transport Corridor through the port of Chabahar in Iran. However, India seems to have overlooked some practical problems. First, the route from Vladivostok to Chennai was once quite prosperous during the Soviet era, but in the post-Soviet era, this route was gradually shelved. If this route is restored for India's coal transportation, or even large-scale construction of related infrastructure is carried out, it will be quite difficult for Russia, especially under the economic pressure caused by the current Russia-Ukraine conflict and Western sanctions. Russia has almost no time to take care of such a resource-consuming project. More importantly, although this route avoids China, the transportation cost is quite high. Coal needs to be transported about 3,000 kilometers by land to Vladivostok and then shipped to India. This multi-level transportation mode has greatly increased costs and may cause coal prices to rise to unacceptable levels, almost losing its economic value. Therefore, this route is feasible in theory, but may face many challenges in actual operation. As for the second route, the situation is more complicated, involving multiple countries, some of which are still politically unstable and face many practical obstacles. It almost only exists at the theoretical level. According to the plan proposed by India, this international north-south transport corridor requires coal to be transported from Russia to Iran, and then from Iran's Chabahar port to India by sea. It is worth noting that India and Iran have made some progress in cooperation on the Chabahar port, but this has also aroused dissatisfaction and warnings from the United States. The U.S. sanctions on Iran and its attention to regional affairs require India to consider carefully when using this port. Therefore, whether it is the Far East Corridor or the International North-South Transport Corridor, India faces major challenges. In summary, giving up the transportation route through China will undoubtedly mean that India will pay a considerable price in terms of economy and logistics. It is worth mentioning that the subsequent questioning of India's real motive for choosing to import coal via Mongolia has aroused some doubts in the international community. Some analysts believe that India may not be simply for coal, but has other plans. Because in August 2023, Mongolian Prime Minister Ayun Erdogan visited the United States for the first time, and the two sides had in-depth discussions on cooperation in key mineral fields such as rare earths. Therefore, some people believe that India may be exploring the way for the United States to import rare earth resources from Mongolia in the future through this attempt. Of course, this speculation has not been supported by conclusive evidence, and it can even be regarded as a digression. As for which route India will eventually choose, or what its real purpose is, let us continue to pay attention to the development of this situation. To not miss out on our future projects and news updates, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to provide you with more exciting and interesting content.